Sergio Oliva and Paul Dillett have to be two of the greatest physical specimens of all time. And I highly doubt it was because they trained the hardest, that they dedicated themselves to dieting the most, more than any other bodybuilder. Hey, they trained hard, they dieted. Well, some say that Sergio Oliva, he trained on Twinkies and cream soda. But having said that, the reason why these two dudes were so great was because of their genetics. They were genetically superior to all else. Sergio Oliva, of course, he was a 3-time Mr. Olympia champion. So he he made good use of those genetics. 67, 68, 69, he was the Mr. Olympia. Now, Paul Dillett, he won 0 Olympia titles. You had Dorian Yates he wasn't the best, genetically speaking, but he dieted, he trained like a madman. But anyway, all genetics aside, because it is an interesting tale. A lot of people don't know what you mean. Let's go through these shots here. Wow. Genetics. Speaking to me. Look at this. Small waistlines. That's what genetics are. Your DNA, your deoxyribonucleic acid, deoxy or deoxy, whatever it is. Now, to explain to somebody that might not quite understand, there was a guy called Franco Columbu. He was Mr. Olympia champion too. But you can clearly see right out of the chute, he's short. So that is part of your genetics, obviously. I think you could be too tall. I think Sergio was right in the pocket. Nice height. But yes, Franco, you can see he was not blessed with those great big giant quads. More than that, it was the small waistline that he didn't have. He had a bit of a wide waist. Probably wider than Paul Dillett's, at 6 feet plus. But yes, you can clearly see the arms also. At no fault of Franco Columbu's, his biceps were shorter. They didn't reach to the end of the arm, and he had long arms. He was a boxer, so, them boxers had long arms, things of that nature, and you can clearly see Paul's biceps, Sergio Oliva's biceps. They reach all the way out. So genetically superior to poor little Franco. But Franco busted his butt lifting that heavy ass weight. Sure, Sergio did too. But who's better in this front double? I almost like Sergio Oliva. Look at that X-frame. That is unbelievable. I'll admit, conditioning, things of that nature of Paul, probably going to be better. 90s, they had other things to take. But I mean, width of this guy, and I get in trouble from you fellers. I hope you guys understand that I'm not lying to you. I'm not spinning you a thread. Paul Dillett, his frame is somewhat narrow for his height. Of course he's as wide as a bus. But he was no wider than a lot of the other guys competing in the 90s, and you can see, width-wise, he's not wider than Sergio. Good six-pack, though. Wow. You're not going to get a better, like I said, genetics, a small waist, a wide clavicle, arms full, and both of these guys have calves. You're just not going to find that anywhere. Oh, I guess Paul had a problem here. Look at this front lat spread. He's just not opening up. And you can clearly see Sergio Oliva blooms like a flower. Look at that. Unbelievable. And of course, when I speak about genetics, it is not all your frame, your height, your small waistline. It is the genetic ability to pack on that muscle. Like these two dudes obviously had the ability to pack on thick, raw meat. There's guys like Darren Charles who he had the perfect shape of the muscle, so that's your genetics too. But he just didn't have the genetic capabilities of putting on gobs and gobs of thick Phil Heath type muscle. So he might not have wanted to take the extra juice either, worth to mention. So shout out to Darren Charles, another genetically good bodybuilder for sure. So in my estimation, the front lat spread would absolutely go to Sergio Oliva because he looks a lot better in it. He's opened up a whole lot more. He's better at striking the pose. Now, it is worth to mention, these guys are from totally different decades. The thin skin alone would get Paul Dillett a victory if any judge were to look at this seriously. But, like I often mention, you can't do that. You just can't say that. Just because Paul Dillett looked a certain way, you can't go out there into the public. Well, you can, I guess. You're going to look foolish if you suggest, well, that he would have looked like that in the 70s. No, he wouldn't have. No, he wouldn't have. And Sergio wouldn't have looked like this if he competed in the 90s and the early 2000s. He would have been way bigger. And much thin-eared, skin-eared. So yes, there's that. So here's a side chest. When you do these comparisons, you have to kind of use your imagination. I just don't think that Sergio would ever beat this great big Paul Dillett in the side chest, even if he competed in the 70s. It's just not the best shot for Sergio. He needed a posing coach, is exactly what he needed. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, because at this time, I understand this was probably impressive. It is impressive. They could sit a glass on their chest without spilling the water. They wanted to have it straight. So that was his aim. And if that is what you're focused on, sure, he's beaten Paul Dillett. But having said that, that is a difficult one to call. Side tricep is even worse. Paul, man, what are you doing? He had the capabilities here, of, man, I don't want to upset you Dorianites. He had the capabilities of beating everybody except for Dorian. And for you Dorian haters, even him. He just didn't know how to pose. Posing coach. I think Paul Dillett should have been Sergio's posing coach. Vice versa. Wow, what an accident that would have been. And speaking of accidents, the Paul Dillett back lat spread could be considered an accident. And it's no accident that guys like Sean Ray, Phil Heath, Kevin Levrone, I guess. Well, maybe not so much in the back shots, but it's no accident that these guys perfect every little muscle when they strike this pose. Paul Dillett could care less, it seems. Or maybe I'm being totally facetious? No. Disrespectful. Yes. Disrespectful and ignorant. Maybe he has scoliosis, baby, please. And in that case, I apologize, Paul Dillett. Did you ever know that you're my hero? You are the wind beneath my wings. Thank you, Bette Midler. Wow. So Sergio has a pretty good rear lat spread, and Paul's not so much. The rear double bi, probably the better shot for Paul Dillett. And this is a little unfair, I have to say. Sergio Oliva from 1985, his comeback, it's 85, right? I think he wore yellow in 84. So yeah, it's still a better back development, I would suggest. Great big arms on Paul Dillett, striated glutes, but like we said, who cares about striated glutes? We're not looking at that. We're not looking at that at all. Although, I have to say, for 1985 and for a comeback, that's a pretty good condition for Sergio. I think his condition of the hamstrings, things of that nature, probably as good as they've ever been, for sure. But Paul, he's not going to be able to touch Sergio on the back, and that's part of your genetics too, you know? People overlook that. Could be the fact that he didn't train as hard, but we heard the song. It might be scoliosis. Baby, please. And right into the most muscular, because let's face it, the abs and thigh was not the best pose for Sergio, and there's only one picture of it from his comeback, so not fair to use. The most muscular... Do you hear me there? Not fair to use. What am I even doing here? What is going on? My love for bodybuilding has resulted in a comparison between Sergio Oliva and Paul Dillett. And I run through the poses, and I let you guys know who looks better. Sergio Oliva, he would be the better bodybuilder if they began from the same time. The same knowledge, things of that nature. Sergio Oliva was not missing anything. Calves, quads, small waist, big arms, full biceps, the ability to pack on muscle. Back development, lat insertions. Now, Paul did have lat insertions, but he just did not cultivate them. He was too busy worrying about these front poses and how much more he would dominate over the other gentlemen. Should have been worried about your weak points, Paul. And Sergio, he really had none. You could say it's his conditioning, but for the 70s, 60s even, his conditioning was just fine. Hit thumbs up on the video, guys. And please do not forget to subscribe to the channel.